8 months ago, we brought you our first showdown on modern cars. We took our 2017 Mazda CX-5 GT and compared it with a 2015 BMW X3 xDrive 28D. Now, we knew at the time that the engines were not comparable, and that severely limited our road test during the segments. Now, we do have better access to cars today. We've grown quite a bit since September 2017. We also had a lot of people at the time say that they felt the X1 was a much better candidate for the CX-5 than the X3 was. Now, this car is a little bit smaller, but the X3 was a little bit bigger. Our showdown today is on this BMW X1 xDrive 28i and this Mazda CX-5 GT. We're going to be showing you everything about these two compact crossover SUVs and everything you need to know if you're wondering, should you buy a fully loaded consumer brand car or jump up to the luxury world? Now again, one of the big complaints that we had when we did our showdown before on the X3 and CX-5 was the X3 was 2 years older than the CX-5. Now we're kind of doing the same thing here. This is our 2017 CX-5, this is a 2018 X1, but to be fair, there are really very little that has changed for the 2018 Mazda CX-5. Aside from a few little buttons on the inside, the exterior really looks the same. The biggest mechanical difference is the introduction of Mazda's Skyactiv G engine that has cylinder deactivation. But even if we were to film it with a dealership today, we wouldn't get an idea of how much more efficient that engine is going around the corner for 25 minutes. So we're going to be showing you really the differences between these two cars, and keep in mind that the CX-5 2018 is about the same on the inside. They haven't done a whole lot to it. Now, both cars do have front adaptive LED headlights. BMW does a little bit differently. Their lights will turn, but they also have a cornering lamp that will turn on, whereas Mazda's, the lights are the only ones that turn themselves. But there are LED fog lights at the bottom for the CX-5, whereas the BMW here still uses a halogen fog light. Now, there are two major features that come on the X1 that we asked for the 2018 Mazda CX-5. They're still not available here in North America, but they are available if you live in Europe. There are front and rear parking sensors that are built into this car, and also power folding mirrors. Now, the other features that both cars have are pretty similar. Both have a comfort access. BMW, just kind of put your fingers in behind the front doors here, and then you push the little contact button on the door again to lock them back up. Mazda, you push the button or you push the button. There's really no difference there. But again, the technologies, they get to the same destination, just work slightly differently. Both cars have power lift gates out back, and both vehicles have backup cameras that have a guiding line to show you how close you are. But again, the BMW has parking sensors, which certainly helps. I mean, it's not a big vehicle, but they are nice to have. Now, I know I've said it before in other episodes of Test Drive, I don't like using cheat sheets, but when we're doing a complicated review such as this, it's important that I get all the information correct. Now, we're going to be starting off with the pricing here for the CX-5. Again, this is, even though it's a 2017 model, the pricing is basically the same, but these are 2018 prices. And I seem to have to specify, even though it's in our spec screen and the vehicles have Ontario or Quebec license plates, you should assume that we are in Canada, so all of this is in Canadian pricing. It is Canadian pricing. I still have to say that we still have a lot of people that comment and complain that these cars are too expensive, but they don't realize we're not in the United States. So I'm sorry, we're in Canada, Canadian pricing. $36,700 for the 2018 Mazda CX-5. And basically the only option is the $1,600 tech package. Now, that adds things like cruise control with smart brake assist and adaptive functionality. That's something you don't have on the BMW here, so radar cruise control. You also have smart brake support, pedestrian detection, forward obstruction warning with collision prevention, lane departure, both assist and notification, high beam control, BMW's got it, traffic sign recognition. Both have head-up displays. They are pretty much similar. You know, there's not a whole lot of difference between them. And then the Mazda has a color multi-information display. The BMW does as well, but I feel that the one of the Mazdas got a little bit more control and a little bit more of a use case for it. You get XM radio, and then with the GT trim, you also have Bose, which you don't have the premium audio system here on the BMW. Now let's take a look at the X1 xDrive 28i. The base price for this vehicle is 40,600 Canadian. There's $12,095 worth of options on this car. There's quite a few of them. So first of all, the Atlantic gray paint here is $895. The Mocha Dakota premium perforated leather interior is $950. It's got an oak grain wood trim. The driver assistance package is $1,750, which has the front and rear park distance control, a forward obstruction warning, and lane keep warning. It also has the premium enhanced package, which is $5,750. That adds BMW's built-in navigation system, auto dimming side view and interior mirror, panoramic sunroof, which the Mazda does not have, lumbar support for the seats, Mazda's got that, heated steering wheel, Mazda's got that, head-up display, Mazda's got that, alarm, again, same thing, comfort access, we talked about it, XM radio, has a hi-fi sound system, doesn't sound that great, but for $1,300 you could add Harman Kardon, and we did note in the X3 video that the Harman Kardon system sounded better. And then you also have the auto trunk. You also have to pay $750 just to get wireless charging, Wi-Fi hotspot, and Apple CarPlay. Now there are some differences with it. Obviously Mazda does not have Apple CarPlay yet or Android Auto. It is coming, so if you're buying this car and you're hoping to be able to use it, probably by the end of 2018, they'll have rolled out to these cars. The BMW though has wireless Apple CarPlay, but they do not support Android Auto, period. You also have, I don't know why, a $350 luggage net that's been optioned on this car. You have adjustable rear seats for $400. The Sport Performance Package, not M Sport, but a Sport Performance Package for $950 to get the 19-inch rims. And basically, that's about it. Sport steering and the sport seats. So that's $950. And then you could, if you really wanted to continue adding more, like I said, $1,300 for Harman Kardon audio, $300 for HomeLink. This car does not have it, and the Driver Assist Plus, which would add radar cruise control for another $1,000. So all in, the BMW is looking at about $52,695. So there is a huge price difference between these two. And as I mentioned, there's not a lot really in terms of the difference. You know, both have 19-inch rims, both have power opening trunks, both have comfort access. The BMW has a few things that you cannot get, period, on the Mazda, no matter where you live, like the panoramic sunroof. But the Mazda does have a lot of things that the BMW requires you to pay lots and lots and lots more for. I mean, you're looking at really a $16,000 price difference here. And that's kind of it for the exterior stuff. I mean, we could talk about the design and the look of them. Personally, I really do prefer the look of the CX-5. I think it's a very nice premium-oriented design to it. It's handsome, as well as a little aggressive on the front. The X1, though, they have changed it. It's changed more from that weird station wagon kind of hybrid thing to this. It's a little bit more of a smaller X3, and especially compared to the new facelift, new generation of the X3. It has a similar bum here. But I feel that this really is smaller. I know a lot of people said that they thought that this would be a better comparison, but I feel that this is a much smaller vehicle, both on the inside and the exterior. I mean, the trunks feel smaller, the rear seat space feels smaller, but I think we need to jump in now. We're going to start with the BMW here to see what you can get with this price point, and then we'll jump into the CX-5. Now, I'm personally very excited that we have the opportunity to drive the X1 versus the Mazda CX-5, because we've had this car for a lot longer than we had the X3, which we did earlier in September, roughly. So when we did that showdown, you know, I was very happy to be able to film those two cars, despite the fact that it was a diesel and the years were off by a little bit. So it was not quite the best that we could have done, but at the time, it was the best that we had, and I'm pretty excited now because we've got this car. This is much more comparable. The engine's a little bit faster in this than in the CX-5, and it should be a little bit more fun. It's a BMW, right? Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the inside here first, and then we'll jump into how it rides, and then we'll jump into the CX-5 and talk about the same things. So first off, the interior here doesn't feel quite as cramped as I thought it would, but it's not quite as luxurious as you might expect. I think that these are kind of like plastic wood trim pieces here, even though BMW does advertise it as wood. I really am not going to say one or the other. I think it just feels kind of hollow, and we're going to leave it at that. Everything else, though, is plastic or rubberized kind of plastic along the dashboard here. The center console, at least, the part where your gear shifter is and your little cup holders, that is leather wrapped, and the seats are genuine leather. They are a Mocha leather trim. But there are some features that both cars have. It does have a head-up display, and it is quite nice. Very similar. They are colored, but very similar. You can't really customize it. It is what it is. You do have speakers. Yeah, Bose, I know a lot of people don't really like it, especially in the audiophile community. They're not really big fans of Bose, but it is a premium audio system in comparison to this, which is just a hi-fi system through BMW. But the navigation here, far better. No matter what, we really, really love iDrive, and the fact that it does have wireless Apple CarPlay is a huge plus. Even when Mazda eventually rolls out Apple CarPlay and Android Auto in September, roughly 2018, it's still not going to work just as well as this because it is wireless, so it means that I can keep my phone in my pocket and be able to use it without having to pull it out. So it's quite nice having that, but there is no Android Auto support, so if you have an Android phone and that's important to you, you're kind of out of luck. Now, when it comes to seat comfort, I'm not quite as comfortable up here. These seats are firmer, but I know a lot of people do like the firmness of BMW seats, especially if they are the sports seats. That's what you get with this. I think that the Mazda CX-5 have more comfortable seats because they do kind of cushion you a little bit more. You do sink into them more than you would on this car, but there are tons of people who like the firm ride and seating on these types of cars, so if that's what you're into, you're going to like this a lot more. Now, when it comes to the rest of the space in this car, I was pretty impressed. I always thought that the X1 was a subcompact crossover, but it's actually a compact, so it really is, you know, a little bit smaller than the CX-5, but on the inside here, I'm quite happy. I'm not as tight as I thought I would be. The driver space here is pretty good. If I get into the back, okay, it's a little bit smaller than you would expect, but our daughter is able to fit in there, no issues. And then if you jump and put stuff into the trunk, there's actually a lot more room in there than I thought. And you can flip the bottom down where you've got what would be the spare tire. Since these are run flats, there are no spare tires. You're able to put a little bit more storage in there. So there's a lot more going on with this car in terms of interior space than I might have originally anticipated. So if you are thinking about cross-shopping these and you're curious about really overall cargo space, this actually does do pretty well. Then the drive itself is not bad. I mean, it still drives like a crossover. It does have all-wheel drive, which is a huge plus for people up here in Canada, especially if you're going to be driving this year-round. And yeah, the power is okay. It's a 228 horsepower engine, the same one in the Mini Countryman that we had. So you could put the car, there is sport mode, so we're in sport mode right now. You can put it into the sport transmission. I don't know, I mean, like, it'll go, right? It doesn't sound anything too exciting, but it goes. And I have noticed if you keep it in regular mode, right, comfort mode, without putting it into the sport transmission, you know, you put it down, oh, it was like a second there for it to get into the right gear. So it is slower. The transmission really runs a lot slower when it's in comfort mode, but that's the whole point. If you really do need the power, then you put it into sport mode and you go. And I guess it works. I mean, I'm not overly thrilled with the amount of power. It does have more power than the CX-5 now. Now, we're quite happy to be doing this showdown for you today. We had a lot of fun doing the X3 versus CX-5, but a lot of people did ask to see the X1, and since we've got it, we figured it's a good opportunity to get out there and try it out. And it really is the first time I've had the chance to drive that vehicle. But there is a lot different when we get inside of our CX-5 here. Now, we do need to mention that this is still a 2017 model. We didn't have an opportunity to get back with the dealer to be able to film the 2018, but really there aren't a lot of difference with the new version. Aside from a couple little buttons on the inside, really the biggest mechanical difference with the 2018 is cylinder deactivation. And even if we were filming it at the dealership, we wouldn't have enough time to actually be able to go out on the road and find out how that really changes the performance for this vehicle, because we just don't have enough time. You really need to find out over the course of probably months before you actually start to really notice a change in the pump when you're using the cylinder deactivation on the new CX-5, just because you're not going to be getting to it too often. When we did the video on the 2018, I don't think it activated itself at all during our road test. Now, the first thing we should talk about is the interior here. Things are quite different compared to the X1. I find that this is a much nicer interior. So it's the same color, black throughout and everything, and we know for sure that the little wood trim here is certainly plastic, but I do find that it's nicer. You do have this more leather wrapped throughout the door cards and front here. It's a little nicer than the rubberized plastic material that we find on the top of the dashboard. But yeah, I mean, the rest of it is plastic. You do have leather on the center console here, so for the most part, it's just a little bit nicer on the inside than the X1, but I find that the seats are just outstandingly comfortable here. They are bigger. They're not sports seats, so that might be why I sink into them a little bit more, and I find that I have a good seating position throughout. I also find that seating in the back is bigger as well. So if you are sitting back there, it is a little easier for you to be able to sit if you're bigger like myself, and our daughter has more room. Plus, you do have the heated seats back there, whereas the X1 doesn't have that. Now, there are some features that this Mazda just cannot have where the BMW shines. Front and rear parking sensors and power folding mirrors. You can get them in Europe, but just not here in Canada. But there is more safety tech on this car as configured. Again, you can get that with the X1, but you do have forward collision with autonomous braking. You do have lane keep assist, so it'll steer you back into the lane. It does have blind spot monitoring. With more packages, you can get that on the X1, but not the one that we have as configured, and you're still saving yourself about $15,000 if you go with something like this. Now, performance is also going to be the biggest differentiator between these. You have about 40 less horsepower here. This is a 184 horsepower engine compared to the BMW's 228, and you can kind of feel it. You know, we're driving around regular streets here. We're not going to be pushing either car too hard. But I think for the most part, if you're buying either of these compact crossover SUVs, you're probably not going to need full power on it anyway. Most people are going to be looking at either one of these to go back and forth to work, back and forth to school perhaps. You're not going to be towing anything with it. You're not going to be taking either of them to the track. It's really just to go back and forth to and from work, to and from whatever it is you're going and doing. And, you know, it's going to be relatively efficient. And especially with this, it's going to be quite a bit more efficient than the 9.7 liters per 100 kilometers the X1 has been averaging. This averages 8.5, which is a big difference. Not to mention, you don't need premium fuel with this, whereas the X1 you do. So you're saving at the pump, you're saving at the initial purchase price. And really, I think that the design of this is so good. I know it looks like the CX-9. I know the new Mazda 6 has a similar design to it as well. So just like BMW, they do keep a similar design throughout. But I find that the interior here is just laid out a little nicer. It's a little bit more premium. And that's the thing, you buy the BMW because it has the luxury badge. And 20 years ago, there was a big difference between a luxury car and a consumer car. The interior trim was way different. The features offered were way different. But today, that line has blurred so much now. You can get a lot of those premium-oriented and luxury-oriented features on consumer cars by paying a fraction of the price. And for the most part, all the tech works the same, especially the safety tech. I don't see really a difference between BMW's forward collision and Mazda's forward collision. Now, the tech screen here certainly is the biggest difference when it comes to tech. It's smaller, it's a 7-inch screen, and it doesn't have Android Auto or Apple CarPlay yet. It will be coming, but I do find that iDrive's navigation is miles ahead better, and really compared to anything else out there on the market, not just Mazda's. But I do find that Mazda's infotainment is kind of like a mid to late 2000s version of iDrive, where they've almost kind of copied the UI elements and the way that it works. So you are kind of getting like an iDrive experience if you're driving the Mazda CX-5, but the BMWs are just way nicer. So if it really is important for you to have tech and you have an iPhone, then you definitely are going to enjoy the infotainment experience with BMW much more than this. But if you have an Android phone, then wait a couple more months and you should be able to get the update retroactively. Now, as we kind of wrap up, we have to think about how this car compares really to the X1. There's a $15,000 price difference between the two, and that's a lot of money. For $15,000, I could go buy maybe not the greatest shape, but a pretty decent shape E46 M3 on top of this CX-5. So I can have a really good winter vehicle that I can drive during the winter, and then I can have a really fun toy that people are really going to appreciate during the summer. Because no matter what, I know people are going to buy the X1 and they're going to enjoy it. It's just not a head turner, and neither really is the CX-5. Neither car is going to be driving down the street and people are going to stop and ask you what it is, because they're just SUVs. There's not much that's overly special about either one of them. But for me, the choice is clear. I would not buy the X1. If the X1 was the same price, I probably still wouldn't buy the X1. I think that the Mazda CX-5 here has so much going for it, and it really shows that it can compete against more expensive vehicles in luxury segments. Now, people are still going to continue to buy luxury cars over their consumer counterparts because of the brand. And when it comes to the X1, there's no doubt about it, that's what that car really is all about. It's all about the brand. It's not an overly luxurious car. It's not an overly enjoyable car in comparison to BMW's other vehicles. It is a vehicle meant to sell in volume, and there's no reason we should lie about it. That's what it is. Whereas the CX-5 here, it is going to sell in volume, but Mazda certainly wants to make this car into more than just a vehicle you drive back and forth to work. They've put a lot of passion into it, and I really enjoyed driving it, even though we don't get the opportunity to do so too often.